I'll say right off the bat that I'm not super psyched about doing this, but when you commit to a process, which I have, which is doing this podcast and doing the solo episodes weekly, then you do it. So you could extrapolate out to training, work, chores, 1,000 other things that you may or may not be too excited about doing. To bring everyone up to speed that isn't aware, uh, myself and my family live in the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales, Australia, which is sometime within the next 24 hours going to be hit by Cyclone Alfred. I keep wanting to say a hurricane. I think it's because of my time in the US, but it's definitely a cyclone, either category 1 or 2, likely by the time it hits the coast. And at our home, there's a high chance of flooding. The power's already out. We have a lot of trees. I suspect some of them are going to get blown down. I hope they don't get blown onto the house, but there's not an awful lot that can be done about that. We preemptively left. So 2 days ago, I got my family, my wife, kids, and dog out. And my cat and I left the following day, which was 2 days ago. We've spent the last little while at my in-laws' holiday house, which is about 6 hours south down the coast. I'm not going to say where it is for all the obvious reasons. As it stands, I was able to convince my insurance to give us some temporary accommodation for at least the next week. Not that we couldn't stay with family, but we want to stay a little closer to where we live. For when the cyclone rolls through, I'm going to have to drive back and see what the status is before knowing whether it's safe to have or practical to have my family come up with me. Uh, So my family has the same collection of wife, children, and dog left this morning to go 3.5 hours back north to Coffs Harbour, where our accommodation is for the next little while. And I'm waiting here at my in-laws' holiday house because the fucking cat hasn't showed up this morning. So she goes outside at night, and even when that's unfamiliar, it's either let her out or she'll just cruise around inside, pestering everyone. So it's a matter of pick your poison. But when it came to roll out this morning at 8:30 a.m., she's nowhere to be found. So I'm sitting here waiting for this cat, and I say, this fucking cat, I love her, otherwise I wouldn't be waiting. For context, we flew her and the dog back from the US when we departed the US for Australia. So you can imagine what the cost and the investment would be in that. You could extrapolate out to how much I care about these animals. So I will stay here until she shows up. Hopefully that'll be soon. There's also the potential that that won't be till dinner time, which is, let me see, 6 hours from now. And then there's the outside chance she doesn't show up at all because she's stuck somewhere or she's been run over by a car or God knows what. That's usually not the case. Stuff like this has happened previously, and you'd say, well, why not? Why not restrict the movement of the cat? But then she'll just make a lot of noise and make life uncomfortable for everyone. And we've taken her on holidays before, so she stayed in all sorts of different accommodation, and it's usually worked out just fine. But here we are right now. And more broadly, here we are with a big change of circumstance. And I'll say at the front end, things could be so much worse because we could be in a situation where we had nowhere to go. And that's not the case. We could be in a situation where we have people in our family that needed ongoing medical attention or special provisions or stuff like that, which is also not the case. We're healthy and we have a roof over our heads. I have this one. My family will have another one shortly, and I will join them not long after that, hopefully. And we're in a situation where we have insurance, and either due to the benefits of our policy or because I'm especially convincing, they're already supporting us, even though I don't know what the status of our house is. So I know we don't have power because I can check that online. What we do know is there's a high likelihood of flooding and wind damage because our area itself is flood prone historically, and they're expecting a shit ton of rain in the next little while. Unprecedented winds will likely bring additional challenges. And so that is the current status of where we're at and what's going on with our family. Despite all of that, there's this internal monologue that I have, which is both the need to move my body because I'm in such a habit of it. This is something I've been doing for 25 years, is training pretty consistently. So working my body hard regularly is my normal. And when I don't for more than 2 days, and it's been 3 days without meaningful exercise as of right now, usually I can do about two before I start to get, I don't feel very good, is the long and short of it. I, mental health, physical health, to me, they're the same thing. And although I train in part because I have these performance goals, there's also the likelihood that exercise underpins a big portion of my mental health, whether it's endorphins or blood flow or a matter of habit or a matter of feeling better when I'm more tired because that's, or even slightly more tired because that's my normal. I really don't know. From the age of 16 onwards, my normal has been training, if not every day, then certainly most days, with the only reason I wouldn't be training is a respite from the training. I also have, despite all this other stuff going on, the inner voice, which is reminding me that I have performance goals and that no matter what's going on with the weather or our circumstance, my performance aspirations, they're not going anywhere. So although they're less of a priority right now, they're no less important to me any minute, any hour, any day of the week, no matter what, it's still a priority. So I still have this, okay, how am I going to get after it under the circumstances? So before I left, I packed a few things. I packed one kettlebell, 48 kilos for you sickos that are interested, a band, a jump rope. A band is in like a hip circle for hip adduction, and a band, like a longer band, to be able to, I guess, if I'm being optimistic that there's some world in which I could do assisted standing ab wheel rollouts, at least I can keep chipping away at that. So if there's some attributes that I can improve on the training front, then overall I'll feel like this has been less of a shit experience. The other part of me is trying to wrap my head around the circumstances and put a positive spin on it, which is what I think we are obligated to do. The phrase I'm looking for is that optimism is basically a sense of, is a type of bravery, hoping for the best with the understanding that that might not be the case, but you hope for it anyway because you'd rather look for the upside, the potential upside, and have that not turn out to be the case than just accept or expect worse circumstances. So the optimistic point of view is that a house is fine, that for other people, the circumstances aren't too bad for them either because tricky aspect of this is you think, oh, okay, well, maybe if the cyclone goes somewhere else, but then of course it's going to impact other people, and those people might be in worse circumstances that we are. So I would hope for everyone to avoid any injury or illness or just serious inconvenience because their house is washed or blown away. That includes us. And if that's the case, then we get this unplanned holiday vacation for a week. And the likelihood is that it'll roll through over the weekend, and then sometime early next week, I'll drive back up. And if all going well, I'll reverse the preparations that I did on the way out, which is to move everything to elevating it as much as possible. So putting things on counters or higher in cupboards or whatever I could do to get things above waist level. And there's a world in which we go back and our place is undamaged, and I can call my wife and say, we're all good in the hood, grab the kids, grab the dog, let's grab the cat. Hopefully, she might be with me, she might be with them. This is one of the unknowns. At that stage, that would be the best case scenario. So then we could just kick on with our lives as we were beforehand. The other potential outcomes on the table are that I drive back and our place is flooded or the roof is blown off, and our circumstances will then change. I will then have to go through the process of working with insurance and whoever to begin that process on fixing our place. But then in that circumstance, we won't be the only ones in that situation. So we will be more displaced than we are currently, which is what we are, but we will be displaced for a period of time, which will require further adjustments to our plans. I will still take an optimistic point of view if and when it comes to that, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now is dealing with what is, which is changing circumstances and having to roll with the punches. So I know if you're listening to this, you're either like my stuff or you're a exercise training keen bean like I am. And perhaps that presents itself as when there's a missed session or a series of missed training sessions, feelings can percolate like, who am I? Am I all my aspirations? Are they gone now because I didn't do this session on Tuesday 8 months before? And even if you can mentally see that that's not the case, there is a part of you that is so prepared to do everything that's necessary that when you can't because of circumstances outside of control, it feels like you're losing something, that something's getting taken away from you. It almost presents as a grief or something like it. And that was very much my experience for many years. And I overcame that by just never not training, and also having a life that where too many things didn't pop up. I wouldn't allow myself to be in a situation where things would come up that would detract from my training, which is useful if that's your one and only focus. But when you have a family, there's more at play. And as you age, you should become more adaptable, and you should have a greater breadth of priorities, which is my situation. So as opposed to training being this only thing that was important to me, or at least the most notable thing, it's just now one of any number of things which are important to me. It's not my biggest priority any day, but it's also never not a priority any day. So I'll still train, but things are going to look different. And the last couple of days of there's time as I was spending 6 hours in the car 2 days ago, where there is a process of letting go of what was and starting to think about what is and making the best of it. So after I'm done with you guys, I'm going to go for a little run, even though we're 6 hours south of a I want to say hurricane again. Cyclone, it's the same thing, I'm pretty sure. 6 hours south, it's still windy and rainy here, not ideal conditions. My knee's playing up, so it's not perfect, but we're gonna kick on with it anyway because I have goals that I need to tend to. I'll go for a run, I'll come back. Hopefully the cat's here, I'll have a shower, drive up and see my family. But if I go for a run and come back and the cat's not here, then we continue to adjust. So there will be a lot of micro adjustments over the next little while. But there's no part of me that sees that as a reason to let go of my goals because they're still realistically off in the future. And also because I anticipate that things will come up and adjustments need to be made. I didn't predict that a cyclone would require that we would evacuate our house, and yet here we are. Something I'd like you to think about is when do you need to adjust, and what is your state of mind when you need to? Do you lament the circumstances? So instead of spending all of your energy thinking, okay, what can I do now? You're still connected with what was and holding on to that, even though that reality is vaporized. I would implore you to listen to what I'm saying, consider the circumstances, and then realize in your life, stuff's going to pop up and you're going to have to adjust, and that's fine and normal, and that you can do it better or worse depending on your state of mind. I hope that it's not a cyclone. I hope it's not something that affects your family, but it could be injury. It could be weather related. It could be something that happens with your spouse or your partner or your kids or your parents or at work, or there's a long list of things where the circumstances are outside of your control, but it's with people that you care about, so you're on the hook. And then there's the things within your lifestyle, sickness, injury, that you can go some way to preventing, but not 100%. There's no certainty that you can avoid these things. So if and when they happen, not only what are you going to do about it, but how are you going to go about it? How are you going to conduct yourself? And I'll say that there's been times when over the last couple of days, when I've had the shits, I've just been frustrated by this or that, but I try and practice the art of letting go. I brought two books for this little adventure. One of them is a running book. It's called what is it called? Man, this is going to do my head in. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. It's a book based on the principles of the New Zealand running coach from the 1970s, Arthur Lydiard, based on his principles. And I found it a very good read, so I'm rereading it. And then the other book I brought is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he's a psychoanalyst that wrote a book based on his reflections and his time spent in a concentration camp during World War II. And the importance of maintaining optimism when life is really shit. And as much as our circumstances are suboptimal and not the most fun, we're not in a concentration camp. It could be a lot worse. And so looking at his point of view, how to manage yourself is a good reminder for me. And I'll continue to remind myself of having a sense of perspective, the importance of maintaining optimism. And a note on that book, I didn't read it for about a decade, despite being told it was a really good read and really encouraging, inspiring, because it seemed like some super depressing shit. A book about a guy in a concentration camp. I was like, I don't want to No, thank you. Not for me. But I would encourage you, if you have not read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, then you should go ahead and read that book. And that might be my final message for today. I'll publish this on Friday, Australian time, basically after I've finished. And so this is pretty current. Circumstances will change over the weekend. I will still upload a conversation that I have with someone special next Wednesday that's already been recorded. And I wish all of you the best in the meantime. And you will hear from me if you follow me on social media. But mostly I'm taking care of my family, dealing with what is, and pursuing my goals in the best way that I can under the circumstances. Bye for now.